I want you to try to contemplate about it. Contemplating means think about like, why is he saying that? He's striking the enemies on the cheekbone and breaking people's teeth. What are you doing, God, right? Why is David crying out, God, there's no help for me. They're telling me this and they're telling me that. There is this very powerful purpose. This is a very strong, powerful prayer. It's only a couple lines. I think everybody in here can dedicate it to memory within a week's time. I promise it's so beautiful. But again, our lesson is going to be about that. We're going to come back and read it. I just wanted to introduce it first. We're going to go into a martyr or a saint history about one specific saint. Their name is Polycarp, if I'm pronouncing it right. I'll read it again, but just listen very carefully. Please, very, very carefully. This is, just to give you a background, the setting is in the early centuries. You know, when Christianity was first flourishing, when the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ delivered the faith to who? The apostles, right? And the apostles anointed bishops and priests and deacons and so on. So this is like the very first bishops and priests that they anointed. Of course, during that time, there was a lot of persecution. So, anybody a Christian here? Raise your hand if you're a Christian, please. Let me raise them high. Some of us were like this, right? That's kind of how some people might have said it then, but for a reason. They kind of go like this, because, you know, if you raise your hand like this, you get your hand or your neck cut off. That was the penalty for being Christian back then. Like, it came with a price. So, you didn't go around with a cross around your neck unless you're ready to lose your neck. You didn't. And like our aditas, they have mescals on their foreheads, right? It's not like a little fashion statement. You got to step through cross, right? It's not like a tattoo saying you're gonna get the hand chopped off. That's how it was back then. Like if you told anybody that you were a Christian, there was a couple ways that they killed you. Just to give you guys a background explanation. Usually they throw you in the stadium, the Colosseum. You guys familiar? The Colosseum was the place in, I believe, Rome that was built for a lot of things. People used to do sports in there, like two men killing each other, kind of like, what's that sport they have nowadays? Gladiators. You guys seen the movie Gladiator, right? Like that. That's what they used it for. But when Christianity was flourishing and everything, they also used that same stadium to kill Christians. So if you were found to be a Christian, even a famous Christian, like if you were a bishop or you're a deacon that was preaching all over the place, they would take you and they will throw you in there. They'll either, I don't know, burn you alive, or they cut off your head in front of the people, or they have specific animals like tigers or lions that are chained up. They'll throw you inside the stadium, which is pretty big. Then they'll let loose the lion, and that's it. You're there with the lion. You can't outrun, you know, everybody knows you can't outrun a lion. Right? So that's how it is. That's what it meant. That was the price, the golden price of being a Christian. That starting from myself, I'm very careless with it. Like, okay, yeah, I'm a Christian. Right? Then, you pronounce it, you're pronouncing your death judgment on yourself. That's it. If you say it, if you say you're a Christian, that means you're ready for everything to be over. Man, you're not thinking about your job, your salary. You're not complaining about, oh man, if I'm really going to be a Christian, I'm going to pay Eshut and everything. Man, it's going to be too hard. Oh, I'm going to have to confess my sins. I'm blushing. They're talking about, they're thinking, when they think, am I going to be a Christian? They're thinking, am I ready to be thrown inside of a stadium with a lion? That's the decision they have to go. That's the decision. And we're so weak, we're like, oh, I might have to confess my sins. I'm blushing. What is he going to say? He's going to tell my parents. He's going to tell my dad, my mom, right? That's what we think. Oh man, I can't have a girlfriend, man. I'm going to be like 30, like, got one. By the time I get married, right? That's what we think. That's like the hardest thing. But they're facing life and death. So that's what really sometimes, you know, when we think we have so many temptations and things like that, it's good to realize what those before us went through, because they make our problems seem like child's play. Like, oh, okay, I guess my problem isn't so big. So without further ado, let's listen to one of the stories of one of our saints, Polycarp. I think you'll find it extremely fascinating. starts in the setting where Abana Qidus Ali Harp was already, the Roman people were already looking for him to crucify him, or looking for him to persecute him. Okay, so it starts immediately at right before his arrest, right before they arrested him. And when his pursuers persisted, he moved to another farm, and immediately his pursuers were upon the scene, and when they did not find him, they apprehended 2 young slaves, one of whom confessed when tortured. For it was quite impossible for him to remain hidden, since in fact his betrayers were members of his household. And the police captain, who fittingly bore the same name, Herod, as he was called, was anxious to bring him into the stadium. Thus he was to fulfill his own destiny by becoming a partner with Christ. And his betrayers were to suffer the punishment of Judas himself. Taking the slave, then mounted policemen and horsemen armed in their usual way to set out on Friday about supper hour, coming forth as against a robber. The converging on him late in the evening, they found him lying down in a little room upstairs. Not even from there he could have gone elsewhere, but he decided not to, saying, "God's will be done." So when he heard that they had arrived, he went down and conversed with them, while those who saw him marveled at his age. He was very old, just to give you guys an idea. Marveled at his age and composure, and were surprised that the eagerness to apprehend an old man like him was so great. So they're running around trying to find who? Trying to apprehend who? Trying to arrest who? This little old man. All these people, guards and everything, the whole city, torches and everything, in the middle of the night, Friday. Who were they chasing after? Who were they trying to apprehend? Not OJ, going 75 on the freeway. No, they're trying to find this little old man on foot. And he was willing to go with them. Okay? So he immediately ordered as much food and drink to be set before them at that time as they wished. And he asked them to give him an hour to pray undisturbed. They gave him permission, and he stood and prayed so filled with the grace of God that for 2 hours he could not stop speaking. And those who heard him were amazed. And many regretted that they had come after so godly an old man. So they got there, and what happened? They seen him pray. Man, we gotta arrest this guy. He's so nice. He's like a little old man, and he served them food. Can I please pray? That's what they busted down his door, and he served them food. And they came to arrest him with spears and knives and with chains. And what did he say? He didn't ask if he could escape. He asked, "Could you just give me a couple hours to pray?" And he's probably praying for them too, to be honest. So God, please deliver them from the sin that they're about to perform. Probably felt real bad at that point. You see? Now when he had at least ended his prayer, in which he recalled all those whom he had ever met, both small and great, high and low, and all the universal church throughout the world, the hour came for departure, and they set him on a donkey and brought him into the city. It was a great Sabbath, and the police captain, Herod, and his father, and the Sedis met him. They transferred him to their carriage, and sitting down beside him, tried to persuade him, saying, "Why? What is wrong with saying Caesar is Lord?" What is wrong with saying Caesar is Lord? That's what I mean. In their mind, they don't believe in God. What's wrong with saying Caesar is Lord? Well, he's God. He's the Almighty. That's it. You know, Caesar. There's nothing above Caesar. What's wrong with saying that? That's what they're saying in their mind, and sacrificing and so forth, and thus being saved. At first, he did not answer them, but when they persisted, he said, "I'm not going to do what you advised me." Since they had failed to persuade him, which throughout the history of the Bible, anytime any persecution is being done, it's always being done by who? The good or the evil?
Evil.
The evil. In the history of the Bible, anytime there was any sort of persecution, have you ever heard about Abraham persecuting a hungry man? Doesn't even sound right, right? Never. Have you ever heard about Qidus Musa being frustrated and persecuting the little tribe of the Israelites in the desert and say, "Well, you're no manna for you today"? You don't hear that, right? Anytime there's any persecution going on, it's always who? It's always coming from the evil people, right? Or it's coming from the people who don't have God inside their hearts. Which is a great lesson for us, because anytime we persecute somebody, or anytime we frustrate somebody, or anytime we're on somebody like this, which part are we becoming? We're persecuting. We're persecuting like those who persecuted Christ. So we always should be aware and be gentle. Another lesson in this too is just notice the characters of the people who are persecuted. Please, it's very, very specific, but just notice their characters. Listen and see how when their patience runs out, what they do. Like us, when God teaches us to be godly, we don't run out of patience with one another, right? But because you're weak like me, we run out of patience, and what do? Imagine relationships. If you're engaged to somebody, right? Or if you're you're thinking about engagement and everything. If you've exhausted your patience in waiting for that girl until she says, okay, let's get married, what do? Sometimes we get exhausted. Sometimes we get exhausted, and what do? We try to grab, like how Nabi Yaqub was teaching us, we try to grab what we want, right? Instead of bearing in patience. Now look at these people. Since they failed to persuade him, they uttered threats and hurriedly pulled him off, so that he was descending from the carriage. So as he was descending from the carriage, he scraped his shin. This 80-something-year-old man pulling him off a carriage, he scraped his knee, his shin. And without turning around, listen, he walked along briskly as though he had suffered no injury, as he was led into the stadium with the uproar so great that the announcements of Polycarp's apprehension was not heard by many. So they just rushed him straight from the carriage. They were so nice. Oh, we feel bad for taking your old man. Why don't you just worship Caesar? No. When they forced him to answer, no, I won't worship Caesar. As soon as he said that, because their patience ran out, and because they weren't filled with the grace of God, they pulled this 87-year-old man that they treasured in 1 second, but in another second they pulled him off of a carriage, damaging his shin, threw him inside and hurried him inside of a stadium. Now a voice from heaven came to Polycarp as he was entering the stadium. Be strong, Polycarp. No one saw the speaker, but many of our heads, this is somebody who's documented, a saint, no one saw the speaker, but many of ours heard the voice. And then as he was brought forward, there was a great uproar now that they had heard that Polycarp had been apprehended. So when he was brought forward, the proconsul asked him whether he was Polycarp. And when he admitted it, he tried to persuade him to deny, saying, respect your age. You know what they're saying? Respect your age. You know what they're saying?
You're old.
You're old, man. You only got a couple more years to live, man. Don't go out like this. Don't go out like this, man. Just be at your home, be all nice and comfy and everything. You're an old man. Respect your age. What if he was young, though? What would they say? What would they be meaning if they said, respect your age?
You got so many more years.
You got so much years left, man. You're going to go out like this? You're going to die for what? Respect your age. Like, live out your life. You have so much to live for. This is how, like, how would you transfer that to this day and age?
You don't know anything. You're still young. Enjoy your life.
Still young, man. Enjoy your life. Right? Still young. Just enjoy your life.
Yeah, just go to the party.
And all the other things they usually say, like, swear by the genius of Caesar, change your mind, say away with the atheists. But he didn't do any of these things. Now finally he said to him, he groaned, and he respected him. When the proconsul persevered and said, take the oath and I will let you go. Revile Christ. Polycarp replied, I have served him, how many years? Somebody guess. 80? That's real high though, right? How many years do you think he served Christ? 70? How many years? How many years? 60? Okay. He said, take an oath and we'll let you go. Just revile Christ. Polycarp replied, listen, I have served him 86 years. I have served him 86 years. And I haven't served McDonald's for that long. I mean, I don't think I could ever, I mean, I love McDonald's. I'm faithful to McDonald's. Breakfast, lunch, Well, my wife's not looking. She usually makes me my breakfast. Buy a double cheeseburger, right? But 86 years. I have served him 86 years. And the next part is the more amazing part. And in no way, as what? In no way have I disobeyed him in all these 86 years, right? Right? I have served him 86 years, and in no way has he dealt unjustly with me. See? His relationship with Christ, is that not what he has done for God? But what? God has done for him. He's saying, I've served him for 86 years. And man, my master is good. In no way has he dealt unjustly with me. That means all the bad things that happened in my life, first of all, there were good things when I was patient enough to see how they would end. Secondly, if there was any punishment that I had, it was from God. But it's written that the Lord God punishes those whom he loves. 86, and he's not dealt justly with me. So how can I blaspheme my king who saved me? Since he persisted and said, swear by Caesar's genius, he answered, if you vainly expect that I will swear by Caesar's genius, as you suggest, and pretend to be ignorant who I am, listen to what I say openly. I am a Christian. If you want to learn the teaching of Christianity, name the day and hear. You want to learn about Christianity? Put me on the calendar. I mean, put yourself on the calendar, I'll come, and I'll just listen. You can learn about it. But unless you're here to listen about Christianity, I just need to profess to you that I'm Christian. I'm never going to change my mind. Then proconsul said, persuade the people, Polycarp replied. To you, indeed, I have considered myself accountable, for we have been taught to render fit honor to rulers and authorities appointed by God, in so far as it is not injurious to us. As for these, I do not consider myself bound to make my defense before them. Talking about the people. The proconsul said, this is where he starts threatening him. Listen to this. This is, we talked briefly about this, about the stadium, how people get persecuted, how Christians were attacked back then, what Christianity meant, what it meant to suffer for the sake of Christianity. The proconsul, running out of options, what does he say now? I have wild beasts. I will throw you to them unless you change your mind. He replied, call for them. For a change from better to worse is impossible for us. Meaning a change from what? What's a change from better to worse? How do you go from something good to worse? How do you go from better to worse? Who went from better to worse? We just learned about it with Hawad Adiakom in Manhattan.
What was your question before you said that?
Oh.
How do you fall from God's love?
No, that was it. How do you go from good to bad? How do you go from better to worse? Diakon Manhattan just taught us. Who went from better to worse? Which character? Which biblical character? Eve. How did she? What was the better? What was the better? What was her better condition? What was her better circumstances? What made it better?
She had the grace of God.
She had the grace of God, right? She lived with God. What was worse? Very simple. She lost the grace. It means she wasn't living with God anymore, right? So he said, I have wild beasts. I'm going to throw you unless you change your mind. He replied, call for them. Like, call for them, right? For a change, for better to worse is impossible for us. I know we're Christian. I know you have wild beasts. I know you have tigers and lions and bears in there. I know you have gladiators that are going to spear me and crucify me. I know you're going to have people there that are going to burn me alive. I know you're going to have people in there that chop off my arm. I know you're going to have people that are going to crucify me. But just judges, you know, they grinded him up. You know how they have meat grinders? Meat grinders. They grinded him up. Grinded him. Can you imagine being thrown into a grinder like this? Your bones being crushed. And your flesh being torn. So he's saying, I understand. Like, call the beasts. Bring on the tigers. I understand that. That's fine. But I can't do what you're asking me to do, because what if somebody said, lose all your money. Take all your money out of your bank account and just throw it in the fire. If they try to persuade you like, I'll buy you a jacket. What are you talking about? The condition is, I have something great, better, right? I can't make a change for the worse. That's how Christianity meant for them. It's just impossible for the Holy Saint Polycarp to understand what he's asking. He's like, what do you don't see what the same thing I'm seeing. It's impossible for me to go from Christianity, from having God, which means having everything, to going, having my life, But unless I have God, I have no life. Because He's the light. Christ is the light of men. He's our light. So you're asking me to gain life, but you're asking me to lose life. Like, you don't see it. You don't know what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to give up Christianity, which is my life, so I can earn my life. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to him. The advice call for them for a change of better is impossible for us. But it is laudable to change from evil to good. You see? It's better and it's possible for them, if they were heathens and non-believers, to go from a non-belief to worshiping idols and to worshiping money and to worshiping TV and to worshiping American icons and celebrities, to worshiping the true God. That's good. That's possible. But to worshiping the true God, perfect Christ, to like not worshiping Him and to deny Him is impossible for them. So he said to him again, I will have you consumed with fire if you despise wild beasts, unless you change your mind. Alright, so you're not scared of lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you're not scared of them. Some people are afraid of beasts. Maybe you grew up in the jungle. You're a jungle guy. Maybe you're a Beraha guy. Okay? That's fine. Maybe you had them as pets. Okay? But I know something that everybody fears. Fire. There's not a single person here that fears fire. From a very, very young age, we're told, don't touch the fire, right? We can feel it with our hands. It does damage to our skin, right? So he said, okay, you're not scared of the beasts? I'm going to throw you in the fire if you don't deny Christ. Polycarp replied, you threaten fire which burns for an hour and is soon quenched, for you are ignorant of the fire of the coming judgment and eternal punishment reserved for the wicked. But why do you wait? Come, do what you will. This is an 87-year-old bad man. This man's bad in a good way. He said, let the beasts in and throw fire on me. He's not playing. Let the beasts, let the tigers in, unchain the beasts, let them have at me, let the soldiers come, tie me up, burn me alive. This man's done. He made his decision before he was even in that situation. A lot of us, we wait for a circumstance like we go to college, we're in our single room dorm, the girl comes to sit in our bed, we're just having an idle conversation in the chat, we're in the fire with the wild beasts loose, trust me. And then we think, oh, here we go, saint time. About to start shining and glowing. Qidus Mikhail's going to bust in through the window. He's going to kick her out, right? Just wait, keep waiting, wait yourself out, something wrong happens. A lot of us become undecided in our faith. When the situation happens, the situation happens. And that's why we need to build ourselves now. We build ourselves in prayer time. We break ourselves in our hearts in prayer time. If we're not strong and if we don't receive from God in that very hour of the prayer, we haven't received it. You know, sometimes we think, we're praying. Okay, I gotta cut this one short, man. Don't look like anything's happening. I gotta cut this prayer short. Doesn't seem like there's light coming out from the ceilings or anything. Okay, maybe God is on break or something. Maybe He's not here. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna come back and later on in the afternoon or in the evening, or maybe I'm gonna come back tomorrow. Maybe then God is gonna hear my answer. No, God answers prayers every single time. Every single time you sit down for prayer, you're there to receive from God. You don't leave the room, you don't leave the prayer area until you receive something like almost like a basketball or something you can hug. You gotta feel it. You gotta feel like, oh, okay, now God gave me something. I feel this one. Because when I walk out of this room, I feel like, okay, I just worked a 10-hour shift at work, and I'm super tired, but I go inside my prayer room and I walk out after 15, 20, maybe a half hour. Who knows, maybe even 5 minutes. But as long as you receive it, you walk out, you haven't worked 10 hours. You just woke up this morning. That's how it should feel. You should feel embraced. You should feel empowered. You should feel like you received a grace from God. And this holy saint,